Red Bull just finished preseason testing. And what Max Verstappen was hiding might be even more dangerous than last year's dominance. Because while everyone was distracted by qualifying simulations and flashy lap times, Red Bull quietly completed full race runs that were, on average, 0.4 per lap faster than Ferrari. 0.4. Over a full Grand Prix distance, that is not a gap. That is control. But here's the part nobody is talking about. The brand new Ford power unit, the one critics said would be fragile, ran approximately 12 degrees cooler than its direct rivals. Cooler engine, tighter bodywork, less drag, and almost 15 kilometers per hour more at the end of the straight without even using drag reduction. And no clipping. No loss of electrical power before braking. Full deployment. Every time. But that's not the real shock. Because Verstappen never went for a true headline qualifying lap in perfect conditions. Instead, he lifted on the straights during fast runs. He hid pace. On purpose. Testing is over now. The data is real. And if Red Bull were still holding something back while already dominating long runs, then Melbourne might not be a fight. It might be a statement. Subscribe now, because what Max Verstappen is about to reveal in race conditions could redefine the entire championship before anyone has time to react. Let's start with Barcelona. Because that is where the real story began. The RB22 rolled out quietly. No bold statements. No dramatic bodywork experiments. No visible instability. And that alone raised eyebrows. Under a brand new engine regulation cycle, most teams were fighting something. Porpoising. Energy deployment spikes. Overheating. Red Bull were fighting none of it. The car looked planted from the first installation lap. Max completed limited mileage, but what he said afterward was revealing. The car feels born right. That is not marketing language. That is driver instinct. And when a reigning champion says a car feels natural immediately, that usually means development started from a very strong baseline. But here is where things get more interesting. The real question before testing was not aerodynamics. It was Ford. This is Red Bull's first true in-house engine project under the new partnership structure. New architecture. New cooling philosophy. New electrical deployment mapping. The expectation across the paddock was simple. There would be reliability issues. Instead, what emerged was the opposite. Leaked telemetry data suggested the Ford power unit was operating roughly 12 degrees Celsius cooler than both Ferrari and Mercedes equivalents. That number sounds technical. But the implication is massive. Running cooler allows tighter packaging. Tighter packaging reduces drag. Lower drag increases straight line speed. And straight line speed changes everything in modern Formula One. But here is the part most fans missed during those long Bahrain afternoons. While Ferrari were chasing low-fuel glory runs, Red Bull were simulating complete race distances. Heavy fuel. Consistent pace. Minimal tire degradation. And in those simulations, Verstappen's average lap times were sitting around 0.4 faster per lap compared to Ferrari over extended stints. 0.4 does not sound dramatic over one lap. But over 50 laps, that becomes dominance. And here is where the hidden pace becomes unsettling. Max never went for a full qualifying push in ideal conditions. No maximum deployment mode. No visible battery drain. In fact, analysts noticed something subtle. He was lifting slightly on the straights during some of his faster laps. Lifting. In testing. That is not accidental. That is strategic masking. Which raises a critical question. If Red Bull already have superior long-run pace, and they have not shown their maximum one-lap performance, how big is the real gap? Now let's layer in something else. The RB22 features extreme anti-dive suspension geometry. Under braking, the nose barely drops. That keeps the aerodynamic platform stable. Stable platform equals consistent downforce. Consistent downforce equals late braking confidence. Reports suggest Max can brake nearly 10 meters later into heavy braking zones compared to some rivals. 10 meters. In Formula 1, that is overtaking range. Now connect that to the energy system. Unlike several competitors who showed clipping at the end of Bahrain's long straights, the Ford-powered Red Bull maintained full electrical deployment until braking. No fade. No tapering. Just sustained acceleration. Which explains why Verstappen was clocking nearly 15 km per hour advantage without even activating drag reduction. That is not cosmetic speed. That is structural efficiency. And here is where things become psychologically powerful. Max openly admitted the car is not his favorite to drive. He described it as heavier in slow corners. Less playful. More technical. But he followed that with something more important. It's fast where it matters. That is the mindset of someone who understands championships are not won by comfort. They are won by execution. And testing is over now. There is no more hiding behind fuel loads or experimental runs. Australia is next. And if the long-run data from Bahrain translates into race conditions, then what looked like a quiet preseason might actually have been the calm before another Red Bull campaign built on efficiency, thermal control, and relentless Sunday pace. But we still have to address one critical factor. Because dominance on paper means nothing if operational weaknesses appear under pressure. And that is exactly what the hydraulic incident hinted at. And that is where this story becomes even more interesting. Now let's talk about that hydraulic failure. Because this is where most analysts stopped too early. Yes, the RB22 lost 4 hours in Bahrain due to a hydraulic leak. Yes, it looked uncomfortable. Yes, social media immediately questioned Ford reliability. But here is the reality. It was not an engine explosion. It was not a battery fire. It was not a catastrophic electrical shutdown. It was a systems integration issue inside an extremely tight packaging layout. And tight packaging is not weakness. It is ambition. Red Bull have built one of the most compact rear ends on the grid. Minimal cooling apertures. Extremely narrow sidepod profile. Aggressive bodywork tapering. That level of compression increases performance. But it also makes access complicated. Which means when something small goes wrong, it takes time to fix. The delay was operational, not structural. And what happened after that delay tells you everything about this team. The very next day, Verstappen completed a long-run simulation with almost no lap time variation. Barely 1/10 of a second spread across 15 laps. That level of repeatability does not come from a fragile car. It comes from stability. Now here is where the story becomes even more uncomfortable for Red Bull's rivals. While Ferrari appeared to struggle with thermal sensitivity and high track temperatures, Red Bull's degradation curve remained smooth. Linear. Predictable. No sudden cliff. No dramatic drop-off. That suggests something fundamental. The Ford power unit is not just powerful. It is thermally resilient. Running roughly 12 degrees cooler means the team can afford to push harder for longer. Less battery overheating. Less energy clipping. Less lift and coast. More attack. And in Formula 1, the ability to attack late in a stint changes strategy entirely. Because if you can extend tire life by even 3 or 4 laps compared to your rival, you unlock alternative pit windows. Undercut becomes flexible. Overcut becomes powerful. Safety car timing becomes advantageous. And that is exactly what Red Bull appear to have built. A car designed around Sunday flexibility. Now consider the psychological edge. Max Verstappen thrives when he feels control. Not chaos. Not unpredictability. Control. And during testing, his radio messages were calm. Measured. Technical. No frustration about overheating. No complaints about inconsistent braking. Instead, precise feedback about balance and rotation. Even when he admitted the car feels heavier in slow corners, he framed it as adaptation, not weakness. That mindset matters. Because when the reigning champion sounds composed after a brand new engine transition, rivals listen. Now let's revisit the idea of hidden pace. Observers noted something subtle during faster laps. Max lifting slightly before braking zones, not fully committing to maximum electrical deployment. Why would he do that? Because in testing, there is no trophy. But there is information. And Red Bull protect information better than anyone. If they are already 4/10ths faster on long runs, if they already show superior straight-line efficiency, and if they still have undisclosed qualifying deployment available, then Melbourne could reveal a car that is not just efficient, but explosive. And that would shift the narrative instantly. But there is one final element that connects everything. Adrian Newey's departure raised questions about aerodynamic evolution. Would Red Bull lose its creative edge? The RB22 answers that quietly. The updated side pod and diffuser flow management introduced mid-test week improved rear stability immediately. Drivers reported stronger traction, cleaner airflow sealing along the floor edges. That is not regression. That is refinement. Which means the design culture inside Red Bull remains intact. So now that preseason testing is officially over, here is the uncomfortable truth. Red Bull may not have shown the fastest single lap. They may not have dominated headlines. But they revealed something far more dangerous. Thermal control, energy efficiency, minimal tire degradation, operational discipline, and a driver who knows exactly how much pace he has not yet shown. If that hidden qualifying margin exists on top of superior race pace, then what looked like a quiet preseason might actually be the beginning of another campaign built on control rather than spectacle. And when a team masters control in Formula One, it rarely ends with anyone else lifting the trophy.